Go.
Hey, yo, how's it going?
It's good. Happy Friday to you, Alex.
Happy Friday to you and everyone that's listening.
Yeah, welcome. This is the fourth episode, technically.
Yeah, number
Inside
4.
the firm.
Yeah. You know what? I don't like that we did the pilot as 0. What do you think about that?
I think that was me using Alex's idea.
Ooh, terrible idea.
Which was so the first tiny house we built was going to be 0.
Oh.
Was it? Oh no, 001. I take that back.
It was 0.
So you did have a 1.
Yep. Hey, we got an awesome show for you guys today. We're going to go over some cool stories with some cool lessons, and in each one has a pertinent lesson. And then give you an update about the development project, how we went to the city, some cool things we're thinking about. So it should be good.
Yeah. So one of the first topics that we want to talk about today is firing clients.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever fired a client?
Yeah, I think most architects, or even just business owners in general, think about how they could possibly get fired from their clients. But I think there's an absolute opposite end to the spectrum.
Yeah, because you always hear the client's always right. Like, the client is always right. How many times have you heard that? A million
in my
times.
life, I don't know. I'm kind of tired of hearing about it. I've heard about it so much.
Yeah. So what if the client is wrong? What do you do?
Yeah, and can they be wrong? And I think yes. I think they can be wrong at the same time that you could be wrong. I think you guys could both be right at the same time.
It goes both ways. Absolutely.
Yep. So one of the this particular client, won't name names or anything like that. It was just a speculative home builder, and usually, some of them came into our office before and just really tried to nickel and dime us. I think on that, there's no other good way of putting that. So I think what happened with this one is that we had different sets of expectations, and I think where everything fell off was, so it was a very simple house and was just doing a set of drawings, and there was a bunch of emails that were sent back and forth, and when I specifically recalled changes that are happening in the emails, I saw one thing and then this guy saw another thing.
And was this the client, remind me, because I think I was working on this project too, where, okay, so there's, when a client comes to you as an architecture firm or whatever, there's a couple of ways that they can do it in my head. One, you can be a production house, and one, you can be kind of the architect and the designer. And at F9, we do both. So if you are the designer, they're giving you ideas or saying, we want this many square feet, maybe this many rooms, blah, blah. And then you come up with something and you give it to them. And then from builder's perspective, there's the production house. So I think this is what the guy was doing. We'd get emails and it'd say, do this, do this, do this, right? A bullet pointed list. And it wasn't like we had a big budget. So that's where like the nickel and diming. So how we took it then is like, you literally switch roles, at least in my head, I do. It's like, okay, I am doing that. Like, I'm not thinking about huge ramifications. I'm not trying to make this cool thing. Like, literally, I'm doing exactly what you say. You're the builder. You aren't paying us much. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think he had expectations
that we were going to go one step further. And I think when the word Alex used the word ramifications, so everybody who's an architect or a designer knows that if you move a wall in floor plan view, it's probably going to affect how it looks in elevation view, and then like it could have a whole series of effects all the way up and down a building. Yeah. So we weren't taking that extra step.
Well, no, I think we were thinking about. I think we were thinking about, because that's professional. Like, we were still being a professional, but I don't think it was. How I remember it was, okay, we have a floor plan, we send it over, and he'll say, okay, move the stairs and do something else. And that's all we do and send it back. Where like if it was our client, if it was a second pass, we'd move the stairs, we'd develop the windows a little bit more, we'd do an exterior pass.
Yeah.
Like we.
Yeah, it wasn't just ramifications. Yeah, we would have just taken extra steps that we normally would take when we're in more of the driver's seat, being the architect or the designer.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. So the wheels fell off, and there was some nasty emails back and forth, and finally he called, and this was the very first client that we ever fired. We haven't fired more than like 2 or 3, I don't think.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about this is, so I got on the phone with him, and you got a little heated, but I specifically remember saying, you know what? I think we are just seeing this whole project not eye to eye, and that you have different expectations than we do, 100%. We have the expectations sort of like Alex described, and then he had these other set of expectations where he's paying for a draft. Basically, it boils down to he's paying a draftsman's fee, but expecting a fully developed set of like architect or designer elements on top of it, right?
Yep.
So the way we walked away from it was, and I think this is the best way to actually walk away, is if you can, if you're, we didn't have a lawyer at that time, but what we did was I said, I think we're not seeing eye to eye. We're just going to walk away from this. I'm happy to give you all the CAD drawings so you don't lose any work. Yep. So he didn't just have a PDF and then he had to go to another designer and get the PDF turned into more CAD work and stuff like that.
Also, in our contract, it states either party can terminate the contract with, I think it's something like a week's notice and 10 days notice. So have something like that in your contract.
So there's an out. Yeah, for both parties. I like that. So and I've said this before on the podcast that every single contract is like a little marriage, right? So there's got to be sort of like think of like you're signing a prenup with this one, where you at least have expectations coming out of it. Like you can both get out
clean,
equally.
Clear. Yep.
So we released the CAD drawings, and then the other thing that's written in our contract was, and I gave them to him just in DWG format, and is that it alleviates us from any liability or anything because all of a sudden that's like the pure content is gone. What was great about he walked away. We walked away. I think we even said you don't have to pay your last bill. It wasn't more than a couple $100s or something like that. But what it did was it left everybody feeling like nobody got ripped off. I mean, even though we ate a couple $100s in fees and stuff like that, we had all this negativity go away from the firm. And then I think we solved the problem of not having somebody write a bad review on the internet at that point.
Yeah.
I've always thought that was a good way of just bringing the anger down to a certain level of like, oh, well, these guys didn't make me pay the last bill. Okay, fine. And then they gave me the CAD drawings. Like, I didn't really lose anything at this point. If anything, I won a little bit.
Yeah, because they were unhappy with us. So. Yeah.
So that was, I think, in 2010, and then jumped to 2014. And I get an email from that very same client who actually apologized. And I don't have I wonder if I could pull it up real quick while I'm talking. The email, what he said, but he basically apologized for how he acted the first time and actually admitted that he was out of line. So it was kind of redeeming from that standpoint, but then at the same time we got, like, the client came back. So I think you could have a firing go the complete opposite way, where you don't release anything for them. They could get completely burned. And you maybe you take them to collections and then you're in court. Oh. I mean, you can just see, like, how bad that one could exasperate too, right?
Yeah.
But this one went the perfect way, and then we ended up getting the client back. We haven't done too much work. With them, but it did go to show that, like, people deserve second chances. There's right and wrong ways about doing things, and I don't think there's anybody talks about the proper way to let people go or separate yourselves. Everybody talks about that the client's always right. Like, we could have bent over backwards, but at the end of the day, we have to stand our ground at some point.
Yep, absolutely. I even remember us thinking, like, oh, should we work with him again? And it just came down to why not? Second chance, yeah, let's go.
What could it hurt? What could it hurt? And it didn't hurt.
While you're looking for that, do you want me to jump into story number 2?
Absolutely.
So commercial, I had a commercial client like, get a hold of me, who knows how, probably Craigslist or something like that. And this story is about not letting people push you around and how I kind of deal with it now. Because Lance deals with it differently, but it kind of works out because there's two people. Because I can take them if they're responding my way. Lance can take them if they're responding to his way. So the contractor, it was for basically a yogurt shop.
I think this was maybe your second or third project that you pulled in.
Yeah.
It was really new.
And it was commercial too. Like, for some reason, So we had
to team up with another licensed architect because we weren't licensed then.
Yep. And basically he said, hey, it's gonna be no big deal. Just go in and measure the place and just like draw these little sketches.
Piece of cake,
easy as pie.
I think he even had the fee in mind for you, right? I mean, he sort of dictated everything.
Yeah. And again, we were young and whatever.
Young and green.
Yep, young and green.
Admittedly.
So, and then I said, what? I go, okay, so it's only going to be this. And then all of a sudden, the first warning shot is he left and went to California. So I was like, oh, okay. So now he's not even here. Then the client says like, okay, now draw in where all the hood goes, all this other stuff goes, like everything. Think about if you've done a commercial kitchen, there's a lot to it, right? What's great about it is a lot of the restaurants, like they know what they want and they pick it all.
Yeah.
So like
they even have like a lot of spec sheets already ready to go.
Exactly. So it's not crazy. You don't have to understand what they all need because normally they've done it before. So like they even have the brand name. They know exactly what they want. So it is easy in that sense, but fitting it all in because most of them just draw it on a napkin or whatever, and it doesn't always fit. And then, getting it right and dealing with the city and putting it in the hood. So basically, I don't think it ended too poorly, actually. I just remembered the client was mad. And they were mad because I was asking for more money. And the guy was in California, and he basically said...
He pretty much jumped ship.
He jumped ship and just kind of put it all on me. And even when he said it's going to be easy, it was like, yeah, no, I'll be taking care of everything. He said he'd be taking care of everything, right? So it totally wasn't the case. So first lesson is when someone says that, know that,
When someone says what, specifically?
This is going to be easy.
This is going to be easy.
This is going to be easy. Or what did I write down? What exactly it was?
You wrote down, it's going to be nothing.
It's going to be nothing. It's going to be nothing. Okay.
This project's not going to be, it's going to be nothing.
It's going to be nothing.
4 hours.
Oh, I hate that. And
this should take you 4 hours.
Especially,
just lines on paper, Al.
Yep. Just lines on paper. I still get that. So one person, a developer, he kept saying like, oh, it's just lines on paper. Also, I just need something that quick. And I sometimes just refer him to someone else. I just say, hey, that's not how we operate. We actually put in a lot up front, because try to explain Revit if it seems worth it, try to maybe sell it. And they're like, oh no, but what I want to do. And if you're
even if you go as far to give them an example drawing set that has passed through the city, somehow they're still not convinced.
Yep. So you can try to pass it to someone else. And try to pass it to someone who like, if they say the words just lines on paper, I immediately go to one of my older architect friends who draws lines on paper, like literally hand draws, because that's what you want. And he even, one guy recently said, he's like, no, I can pay like $100 an hour, but it should only take 4 hours. I'm like, okay, then you're looking for an older architect who does hand drawings.
Yeah.
Who will just take half a day and just draw you something out.
Yeah. That's exactly what you're looking for.
Yep. So that's option number one. Option number two is that you can try to convince them that it's going to be a bunch of work, right? So this goes to the local bar in Longmont. Lance kind of tried that approach, but the person wasn't buying it. Oh, it's Longmont, it's going to be whatever. So
there was a client that came in, and I just basically told them, look, when they were from out of state too, but they thought, and they were from a state with a lot of regulations. But they thought coming to Colorado is going to be less regulations. And I basically just flat out said, I like to go into the city with guns a-blazing. And I mean that with, we have all the engineers, everything. I mean, you are like, yes, you are spending a bunch of money up front, but at the end of the day, we have basically everything covered. All the professionals on board. We're not just doing a ragtag project.
And some clients, because Lance and I will be in the meeting, will go, oh, okay. Yeah, let's do that.
And some clients really want that kind of care and attention, and they believe in it.
And that doesn't mean that Lance will take the client, but that's just one approach, and I'm just saying that it's the Lance approach. The other approach that I have is if I see like a glint of rationality in their eye. If I just got a feeling like this person isn't going to be sleazy, after obviously meeting hundreds of clients and all that stuff, saying my approach is they're going to get it. They're going to
eventually.
They're going to eventually. So you do the meeting.
Why do you think you have patience with people like that? Honestly, this is kind of an off the cuff question, but why do you think you have? So because I don't look at them and think they have a glint of rationality. I think like I'm not doing this. Al, you gonna do this?
You know what? I mean, we could go deep into psychology.
You don't have
or
to
whatever,
go deep.
But when you started forming that question, I was just gonna chime in and be like, I have patience. It might just be like
it might honestly be like that. And everybody, whoever's there's a friend listening to that, like they know Lance has little to no patience.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So
except with some clients. Like this one client we got from South Dakota that I ended up for 5 years was working on that house. It's ridiculous.
Oh,
I don't get it.
We'll go into that one later. We haven't. Did we talk about that?
No, I don't think we've talked about that yet. That's another one that, we should talk about that at some point. That's coming late. I think that's in 2011 we got that project, or 2012. Anyway.
So what happens in the middle route approach is that they kind of dictate, and this is going back to the project down in Denver, they'll kind of dictate what they want because, again, they know they're in charge, whatever.
And maybe this is like their third time doing this exact project. Like it's another coffee shop and they've done it, 3 or 4 times already.
Yep. And honestly, I can think off the top of my head a bunch of those clients that we've gotten that are still our clients who we've just slowly led them into the city, which is the slaughter.
Which is the slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
It's where developers go to get on a diet. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one project, Alex just wrote down the name, I'm not going to say it. We've redone 4 times.
Yeah.
Because they kept pounding their head against the wall and they were convinced that they were going to ram this down the city's throat, and we kind of let them just make their own mistakes, and we're sympathetic and did what they wanted to do, and then at the end of the day, now Alex has literally gained their trust to the point where they just trust what he does and says, and now it's going pretty swimmingly, and now we're even doing more work with them.
Yep. And then also now it's like, now I won't let them go to the slaughter 4 times,
Well, I think we're not as green, right? We've been doing this for almost 8 years.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So we for lack of, we have cojones now to be able to tell people, this is how it works.
Yeah. So it's this middle approach, and essentially what will happen is plans will go to the city and they'll see like, oh, I need this, I need this, I need this, and they're like, oh my God, and they realize that that's going to take more work, and it's not rational that the same price that you agreed upon you need that amount of money to execute the whole thing.
So would you give this advice? This is just me coming up with this idea right now, okay?
Yep. And then also, consult your lawyer before taking the advice from a podcast from 2 random dudes.
That's our disclaimer. We need to put that in there.
2 random dudes that you heard about from your buddy.
Exactly. Listen to these 2. Would you give people this advice? Would you be willing to tell them, if they're green, like we were, way back in the day, to say, hey, if you can spare the time, see if you can just convince them to go down to the city with you and have a pre-application meeting for even just like a tenant finish or something, just so they can see it with their own eyes. And especially if they're like a first-time developer, or first-time like restaurant owner or something like that. Would you give people that advice?
I'm going to throw some wrenches at you.
Good.
Here comes a wrench. They
already
already
had talking. I'm going to grab some coffee. Keep going.
Hey, fill me up.
Okay.
They already had the pre-app meeting. So they already know. And then the other problem with that is that if they had the pre-app meeting without you, they might not ask the questions that you know to ask, right? And then the second thing is, even if you go down to the city and say the pre-app meeting and it goes relatively smoothly, we've heard horror stories and been in horror stories where they say one thing in the pre-app meeting and then all of a sudden it's going to be different, it's going to change, right? So you might have 10 questions and 75% of them, you might have 10 questions, and in the pre-app meeting, it seems like all 10 of them are solved. All you need to do is this. All you need to do is this. And somehow you'd still have to convince that client, you know what? Only 75% of those are going to be the answers of what they said. 30% of those are going to change. They're going to say, oh, no, I didn't say that, or something else came crazy up. So, like,
those are both really good points, especially the point about, okay, maybe they've already went to the city. Because we do have a lot of first-time people say, like, oh, yeah, I've already been to the city. They gave me a sheet. Here's the things you have to check off, and here's things we have to do. But then they don't understand exactly the things you're saying. So that's a good... What if... Okay. Would the perfect scenario be this person has never been to the city, and then would you ever recommend doing that?
Oh, going down to the city with them?
Yeah.
If they thought... yes, I would. I would always say, yes, we want to be in the pre-app meeting. We want to, because we know how to ask more questions. But then also, like, try to convince them that doesn't mean it's going to be all hunky-dory.
How do you think I agree. That's a really tough sell.
Because the pre-app...
How do you convince them? Like, could you even come up with, like, I'm asking you on the fly here. Is there a way to actually try to convince them, the client, that, look, the city says this, and here's what happens, and I'm just asking you to trust me?
Here's maybe one way.
Okay.
Ask them in a nice way. I don't have time to formulate it.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, have you ever done like a big project where you were the lead, where you're making a building, making a house, making an app that thousands of people will use, writing a government regulation, anything like that? They say yes. Say, how many did you deal with multiple people during that? Even from the city, there's multiple people at the cities, the architects, the planners, stuff like that. How did that go? And they might come to the conclusion that when you put a whole team together, no matter what, it's going to get messy. It's going to be difficult. That's why you pay professionals. That's why you do it. Like, if it was simple and easy, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be in my office.
Yeah.
Man,
I think that's perfect. I think for me, you just nailed it. Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. My Denver clients are on it, and Boulder clients. They just when I meet with them for the very first time, they always just get it that it's going to be a process. And actually, I've been able to reassure them lately. I'm like, Denver's actually improved because I did this, and this, and they're faster and stuff like that.
Could you hear me when you went over there?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell a story. Could you get some cream?
Yeah, sure.
So, but okay, Lance, that's Denver clients. Right. What throws me for a loop sometimes are the county clients, where they basically say it is going to be easy, it is going to be simple, and then guess what? It is easy, it is simple. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Walsenburg, which is our next project, wasn't that hard.
I know, but I agree. Yeah,
this South Dakota project, I doubt they won't even look at the plans. I bet you.
Yeah, we're doing a house right now in South Dakota. I called the city that I thought they were in, and then they go, oh no, there's no building department. You're gonna have to call the county. I think the county's gonna handle this. And then they go, I told them the address, and then they said, oh, well. Yeah, there's no building inspector here, so if it's your land, you can do whatever you want. Which blew my mind, because we've never had the ability to just do what we want without any regulations. I mean, yes, we're going to draw it to code. I'm going to try to convince them they should get it engineered. We don't have to stamp it, but...
Here's the caveat to that.
To what?
If a country folk says, hey, it's going to be nothing.
Okay.
Which with the city, it might be nothing.
Yeah.
But you're still dealing with them, and you're still dealing with them and their wife, or them and their business partner, or them, and you still have to build it to code. So even if it's a commercial, you still got to deal with the IBC or the IRC or the plumbing and electrical. So it's gonna be nothing. Doesn't really apply.
It's never. So yeah. So is your one-liner conclusion?
It's never nothing.
It's never nothing. It's never nothing. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Here, I found that email. I want to read it to everybody. Okay. So this is the email I got back, and it was, 2014. Perfect. So I had my numbers right. So this is like 3 years later. I get an email out of the blue from this guy. Same guy that I fired, right? You're fired. Hey, Lance and Alex, you guys did some work for me a while back and basically ended up firing me as a client. This is verbatim. And he put firing in quotes. Looking back, I can recognize that I was a pain in the hiney. I'd used the same designer for years and got used to her ways. When she moved out of state, it was hard to adjust. Since then, I've used another CAD guy for plans and realized in hindsight, which is always 2020, that you guys are much more proficient and knowledgeable. Consequently, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to give it another try on a project I have coming up. You can always fire me, again, if the new me isn't better than the old one. Thanks.
I wonder, did you use the word fire?
In the original email, like in the firing email?
Yeah.
No, I didn't use it at all.
Which is wise.
Yeah.
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 Hilarious.
Yeah. And I actually found, then right below that, I found the email that said, here's the attached for the, because it was a phone call. I specifically remember this was a phone call with the guy. So, so good things can happen. I couldn't believe it. I swear that there's been one more that's done that too, where we fired him and we got him back, but maybe not. But it's possible. So
I think so.
Going into this business, I would have never, ever guessed in a million years that you could do that. That you could walk away mutually and then come back and everybody's okay with it.
Here's something that hit me in a dream, too. Well, so some of you might have gotten quote-unquote fired from other clients. And by fired, I also mean like they just might not be using you again. They
tried you once.
They tried you once and that was it.
Yep.
And if you know that there might have been a fight, a disagreement, or something like that, what if you went back and basically he said, I'm sorry, right? And said you're sorry. He said, hey, I'm sorry for whatever specific thing that you did wrong, right? And just because you said you're sorry doesn't mean what they did was right. You know what I mean? Like,
Sometimes people just want to have that acknowledgement.
Yeah. Like I could push you and then you could punch me and kick my dog. Mm-hmm. And I could say, I'm sorry for pushing you. It doesn't mean you punching me and kicking my dog was right.
Made it right. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting little tidbit.
We haven't tried that yet.
We haven't.
Well, actually, we haven't. We've tried. We've kind of done stuff like that where we sort of said, "Hey, let's clear the air here. Let's go out and have a beer and stuff like that." And we've done that with a couple clients.
Yeah.
And it seems to work. And then the relationship kind of evened out and everything like that. So
yeah, there's one I'm thinking about.
I'm gonna write his name down. Is this who you're thinking about? Alex's mom said not to use names, so we're not doing it. Love you, Sherry.
No, we're fine with them.
Well, yeah, but we did have that meeting, right? Yeah, that. So Alex wrote down something you guys will never see.
Yeah,
but we might try to.
We'll let you know how it goes.
No. I actually. So the client he wrote down, can't name names. I actually suggested to you. Remember, like, hey, let's take them out to eat.
Well, we tried taking them out to eat.
We tried to take them out, and they wouldn't respond. It was just all cold emails. And Alex,
I would have shown up at their office and just saying, hey, by the way, in this meeting, this happened. Wanted to let you know.
This client's from New Jersey's East Coast. I don't know if that's the thing to do.
Lance thinks all.
we have one of our newest employees is from the East Coast. He's great.
He's shaking his head. He looked at you. Hilarious. Okay, so that's enough about that. Want to go to Walsenburg City?
Yeah.
City story?
Yeah. So what about Walsenburg?
So we had this client. A guy's going to make his own retirement home.
This was, again, 2010, an early project.
Super cool guy. Low budget. It was just fine.
He's going to make like a 2-bedroom cabin with a basement underneath that you could drive into.
Yep.
And down in southwest Colorado where like middle of nowhere, land is cheap. Really, really amazing place, actually. He's invited us out there to go shoot guns, which is awesome.
Yeah, and we've been out there, but now I have more guns. We need to. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we could just text him or call him. We haven't talked to him in years, but he'd probably be like, yeah, I'm there this weekend. Come down.
He's just an old, cool dude. We just really liked his personality.
Yeah. So I think we technically kind of lost money on the project, but
we did lose money. So we underbid it by 50%, 100, all day long. And it was one of the first clients that we convinced, hey, let us do the structural drafting and hire the engineer. So we do it all in-house. And my thoughts behind doing that has always been, for me anyway, it's being able to seamlessly mend like the architecture and the engineering together, so we don't have like a surprise beam somewhere.
Yeah.
Not that engineers don't do a good job, but I just think, man, if you can do it, especially for small buildings, like maybe a big commercial building, you couldn't do it. But
and what hit me on this train of thought of more responsibility and more money. So when Lance was studying for the ARE test, we were driving down to CU where we teach, and you were reading off questions, and I was answering them. And it was all like, who's responsible for this? Who's responsible? And it was a series of just contractor. I'm like, no wonder we don't make any money. We're technically not responsible for anything.
I specifically remember that day.
Yeah. I haven't gotten those questions yet, but I was like, it became so clear then. Like, okay, if we want more money,
more responsibilities, more roles.
Yep.
Wear all the hats.
So what we did with those plans, since we were spending more time and more money on them, is that we could make them nice and we could use those as marketing. We could use those as selling. So we could show other clients, this is a full project, architectural, engineering, this is what you get. And that's where it kind of paid back. So,
instead of doing, because we've talked about it before, why we haven't concentrated on competitions like other people did. We took this as sort of, okay, this is a way for us to do what we would do if we were doing competitions. We're going to spend the money and the time here.
Yep. And the second thing that was cool about that project was it reinforced the fundamentals for us. So he called us back, since he was doing everything himself, it just took a long time. So a year and a half after the drawings were done, he's like, guys, you would not believe how much little waste there is on this project. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I would believe that because everywhere where we can, we design in 2-foot increments because plywood comes in 2-foot, OSB. Everything is just easier in
everything.
Formwork,
2-foot
increments. And he was just amazed. And for some reason, I know sometimes you need like you need a 1/2 inch on an exterior or whatever. weird
Sometimes you
increment.
just cannot get away with, like, you can't get away from those stupid
Right.
increments. Yeah.
But if you have a bump out that's 1 foot 10.5,
Just make it 2.
what are you doing with your life?
What are you doing with your
What
life?
you're going to cut off that 1.5 inch, and that's and what you just throwing that away for no reason. Like it's literally not going to cost you anymore.
Yep.
Unless they just bid it purely on square footage, and that adds 2 square foot and adds 100.
That doesn't
But-
happen though. I
yeah.
mean, maybe, but yeah.
So
The majority of the time, it's not going to happen like that.
exactly, and obviously you can't make everything in 2 foot stuff like that. But like where you can, just make it a point to do it.
So that was one of the very first things we talked about was over delivering, and this is a perfect example of us over delivering on a project. But then we leveraged those drawings, and they, for a tiny cabin, which I think ended up being maybe 1,600 square feet, we ended up with like 22 pages of drawings, 22 sheets, which is very big for a little tiny house. But what it showed is it just proved to people without us having a ton of built work that these guys know what the hell they're doing.
Yep.
So we used that, and we started landing more and more work as a result. I think it was a good exercise.
Yeah. Can I get? I'm gonna go off script.
Sure.
When we used to land clients, and now still do, we used to go to meetings guns a-blazing, basically.
And
hey,
we used to do it together.
we used to do everyone together, and we used to come and we'd bring 3 example sets and all this. A year and a half ago, we didn't get a client, and we said, we asked, okay, where was our price? They're like, your price was probably in the middle. Like it wasn't a factor. And they go, okay, why did you go with this other firm? Like, oh, they were bigger. They were 11 people, stuff like that. I'm like, we're an 8-man firm.
Oh God, that was a huge project that we missed out on.
Yeah.
But we just got complacent.
We got complacent. Yep. And like, they had no idea. I just thought it was, Alan, I just thought it was you two.
Yeah, I just thought it was you two, and we were up to I think we
Maybe
had
we were-
6 people at that time, but still,
Yeah.
and very capable of doing the project.
Yep. So, that's not like, don't forget that.
Don't forget the fundamentals.
Don't forget the fundamentals.
Ever. Don't ever slip on
Never
them.
do it.
Yeah. Try to not do that. all the fundamentals that we talk about on this podcast, just write them down and remember them. And I mean, routine is so critical for anybody to be successful, right? Like you Tim Ferriss, his new book, what is it?
Tools of Titan.
Tools of Titans. Pick it up if you haven't, by the way. It's awesome. It's awesome because you can just flip through it and then you can pick out who you want to. It's kind of like an excerpt of the interview. And all of these people who are super successful, they have just a strict regiment that they do every day. And yeah, they slip and stuff like this, but man, they're doing the same stuff every day. I just can't stress that enough.
Yeah, his podcast is actually pretty good too. The most recent ones are actually, I skip around, so I don't know if they're most recent, but check them out for sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Cool story, bro.
you want to go to current?
Current.
Okay, the design build. I can't tell you how excited I am about this. I went home and I just
Try.
told Andy, I am super excited about it. That I can't even put it into words.
I'm excited about it too. We had a meeting with the solar company yesterday. And
Shout out Live Solar.
Yeah, shout out Live Solar out of Westminster, Colorado, I think. Something like that. Look them up. LIVSOLAR.
Yep.
Super cool. The new products that are coming out and the way solar is going down is awesome. But they showed us this awesome product that's going to make like the top of these condos that we're doing look like a tree canopy.
Yeah.
That gains energy.
So one of our heroes, Jonathan Segal.
Not the actor,
Yep.
the architect.
Basically, he says in all your projects, he's talking about residential. He goes, I do 2 things. He goes, I put a piece of art, and sometimes it's like a sculpture that's like sitting on his building, right? And I put a fireplace. And he goes, it makes him sell like hotcakes. He's like, no one else does it. Goes above and beyond, stuff like that. So we thought about, we've talked about this. Okay, art, we could buy a nice art piece. We could do some accent walls, stuff like that. And then Josh, our New England employee over there, he's like, let's do a gas oven and stove, which is cool. And then let's run that line up to a gas fireplace on the third story patio, right?
Which is like a sky deck.
Yep. So that will be our fireplace. I think that's pretty solid.
Done.
Yep. And then for the art piece. So they are called, the solar panels that Lance is talking about are bifacial. So on top of a solar cell is basically glass, right, to protect it. Then you have your solar cells, right? And they're basically 4x4 or 6x6 inch squares, right, with about an inch in between. And then normally behind that is either like white and it's boxed in, or it's like black mat and it's, 2 inches thick or 3 inches thick, and it's just this huge panel that goes up there. Well, bifacial ones have glass on the other side. So it's literally glass, cool panel, glass. So then what Lance was talking about, it's this tree canopy. And like, I'm so anxious because
it lets at least 15 to 20% of the visible light all the way through. You know what I mean? So imagine if the panels are over your head and you still get this really cool filtered light.
Yep. And we want, so why I'm anxious about it is because they're double the price. I want to do it so bad, but we'll see how everything, financially works out.
Yeah.
And this is where, like, if you're ever wondering why developers do stuff, like Lance and I question all the time, like, why do you max out the site?
Well,
why don't you?
Yeah, like why are we going right to the property line? It just makes us completely nervous when we go into the city, and then like, because if we mess up like that, are we paying for it?
Yeah, it's just yep. So obviously with our development, we went right to the property line.
And at first we weren't going to, and we were like, see, that's why we're going to be better developers than everybody else. Nope, Now we're there, right to the property line. And I think it came down to like, after we had a meeting with the city, some reason we had to shift things, and we're like, shoot, that's why we're doing it.
The setback went from like 10 feet in the front to 20 feet.
There you go. That was exactly it.
Yep. And we're going to talk about the city and how to approach them and stuff like that. But even like, we want to mimic nature fundamentals. And when we think about sustainability, Lance and I, and if you haven't gotten our book, The Creativity Code, you should, because it goes through a whole
Check
bunch
it out on Amazon.
Yep. Goes through a whole bunch of examples, from a chicken coop to a tiny house to a skyscraper. And fundamentally, the principles are all the same. Mm-hmm. It's the 4 elements. Where are you getting your water from? So on the new development, we want to collect water in rain barrels, which you can do in Colorado.
All of a sudden, because of the last election. Yay.
Yep. Where are you getting your heat from? Solar panels, right? You're getting your electricity from that. Fire, same thing. And then your food is one. So that's like the earth. So on the top balcony, we want to have raised planters so that people can do food. And am I missing one? Wind. So we'll probably plan spaces where you could put plants inside the building that can clean the air.
There you
right?
go. Mm-hmm.
So there, and then also cross ventilation with the wind. That's what we're thinking about, the 4 elements. And with this bifacial solar panels, it will, it will make this cool pattern. So it will look like a tree, sun coming through trees. So I'm just super excited. Just super excited.
It's going to be cool. I'm excited about the project because we can control the whole thing. Mm-hmm. For better or for worse.
Yeah.
So tell everybody about, because I don't think we've talked about this. Let's say you want to become a developer.
Yep.
And let's say you get a piece of land, right?
Yep.
We've already talked about that. What do you do next?
First thing you do, obviously, you make sure you can buy it, finance it, all that. You sign up for a pre-app meeting. And basically every city that I know, they do it once a week. And it's normally on Wednesdays, right? If it's a small town, I don't know. If it's a big town, I don't know.
If it's a small town, sometimes it's once a month, first week of the month.
That's true.
Yep.
And even big towns, it's probably once a week, but you might not get on the next week.
Yeah.
So we went in on a Monday, and they said, okay, sign up. You can't get in on this Wednesday, but you can get in on next Wednesday. And basically we do like a site analysis, and I'll tell you everything, and then I'll even put up this PDF. And this PDF obviously won't be what we're going to make in the future, because you're just getting the ideas out to them. So
and a lot of it's about first reactions.
Yep.
What you're gleaning from all the different departments.
Yep. So fire will be there, traffic will be there, water will be there, utilities, water, sewer, gas, and then a main planner and the building department will be there. So we put together just one 11 by 17, and then we took an image of one of the examples of, a similar thing that we've already designed, just to give them like, okay, the
general aesthetic is going to be this.
Of this quality. It won't look exactly like this, but it's going to be of this quality. Then we go into zoning, and we immediately just say, okay, what our zoning district is, and then we break out what you can use in there. So normally there's a couple different use types, right? Permitted use. So, okay, in ours, you can make a bed and breakfast, boarding rooms, group home, independent living, group care, they have that. conditional use, multifamily dwellings. Okay, that's what we're doing.
What is that? And tell everybody what conditional use means.
Conditional use just means you need to go through an extra step, right?
And there's usually like the staff approves it, right? And sometimes it's the staff approval, and sometimes it's I think a commissioner approval.
Yeah, or the city council.
Council.
Yep, city council. So we are in the conditional use. And our main goal of this was basically because we are still, it was, I think on Monday we signed the contracts, right?
Yeah.
And
had the meeting Wednesday.
And then we had it the next Wednesday. But if they said, we don't like this conditional use, it's going to be hell for you to get through. We would have had to get out of the contract somehow. Limited use. So then they'll say what a limited use is, and then they have not allowed. So they'll say like, you just don't do this here, right?
You're not going to get it allowed.
So don't do that
at all.
The next thing we have is we have an area plan. So like we knew the basic shape and how many levels. So we just basically gave them an area. And how that's going to count is because you need to make sure you have enough open space, right? So just there's normally a ratio or your FAR ratio, your Florida area ratio, right? So then moving to the next column, we just have our site information. So the address, the owner, parcel number, just stuff so that they can identify, how big it is in acres and square feet. And then we have a little form paragraph. So we get into the setbacks. What are the setbacks? Front, rear, side, maximum floor ratio, proposed floor, ratio, what we're going to do. So we're just describing the form, right? And then open space analysis is next. Make sure we have enough open space. Then parking, make sure you look into the codes how much parking you have. So for us, for every residence, you need 2.2 cars per 3-unit bedroom, right? So then we have how many cars and all that. And then the next thing we always like to do is we give them a sort of blocked out 3D view. Because if it's Revit, if you're making it in 2D, you're making it in 3D. So you might as well just give them it. And you'll see if you go on Inside the Farm, this is episode 4. I'll put this PDF up and you can see it. Very generic. It's color coded, and then a site plan. And we needed to make the site plan so we could get all that information, right? All that information basically comes from the site plan. It just lays out the units, where the sidewalks are, where some parking is, and that's it. And basically what they'll do, you'll go to the city and you won't go through everything, but you'll say, hey, we're thinking about doing multifamily, and then you'll say some key points. You'll say we have enough parking, we have enough area, stuff like that.
And don't expect that you're going to get all the answers out of them. And you correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I go in and expect is I'm going to at least see the big red. They're going to at least tell me the big red flags. And for me, it's always, okay, how wide are you guys going to want this road? Okay, how much is the parking? And that will dictate just about everything. Yep. Those are the big, and then if there's any weird setbacks that I haven't seen that somehow the city planner knows, there's a utility easement that we didn't tell you about.
And landscape buffers.
Yeah,
so
landscape buffers are
yep.
huge.
So one of our sides is a 5-foot setback, and they're like, you need a 10-foot landscape buffer on that side. We're like, okay.
Because the zoning said 5 foot, but then but then somewhere deeper in the code.
Yeah, because the other person put a parking lot there, somehow we have to have a 10-foot buffer.
Yeah, there's always hidden crap in the codes, and I think flushing them out in these meetings is critical.
Yep. And then, so every one of those departments will go around and say their piece. And then at the end, I think an important question to ask is because we know developers who try to push it. And the city officials have these meetings every day. Like Wednesday, all they are doing is these meetings. So they might be zoning out the whole time besides their small portion that they have to say, especially if it's later in the afternoon. So at the end, you want to say, hey, thanks. And hey, everyone, just so I understand, is what we are proposing in the general vein of something that the city, you guys, and the planning commission wants to see here?
Yeah.
And then they'll either say, without they said, no, we need denser units, we need residential, all that. Or they'll say, well, no, the neighborhood, blah, 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 blah.
We haven't seen this kind of development here. We're kind of, we've seen the problems it's created in Denver. We're not sure we want it in our community. Again, they're not going to tell you exactly. They just kind of give you those, but there are obvious differences between the two responses. Body language is everything.
Yeah. So no, right when they accept your offer for the land, it means run
as fast as possible.
Does not mean relax.
Because, for anybody who has or has, if okay. It doesn't matter if you have or you haven't. Well, go ahead, Al.
I mean, by run, I mean run, start producing stuff, not run. From
Yeah,
the run.
our pants have been on fire since we did this. Because at the end of the day, you've got I don't know who has or hasn't purchased property listening to this, but when you do, you put down earnest money, and that's the thing you're going to be out on if you end up saying I'm not going to do this project, and there are outs in your contract later on. You can work with your real estate agent. So ask for that from your real estate agent, like, hey, I need 21 days of due diligence time to look into this, meet with the city. I mean, it's up to you how the contract is written, but know that you need to leave yourself some time to be able to have this kind of meeting, to also be able to get an environmental analysis done on the property, to get potentially a survey done. The environmental analysis is a pretty big one because there's a lot of properties in our town on Main Street that Alex and I have targeted that we love and we think would be great, but they're basically unbuildable unless you remove, I think, like 50 feet of the soil or something, because they were old gas stations and they're brown sites and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, your contract, it'll take at least a month to close anyways, because everyone has to get their stuff together. So do everything in there. And earnest money, honestly.
We put in, I think on this property, it was like $3,000 or something like that.
Oh, it was more than I thought. Yeah. Yep. So it's not the worst. It's not the best. You don't want to lose it. But if you do lose it, it's not like you're losing out on.
And actually, so for anybody who hasn't, again, if you're looking to do this for the first time, there's even you can even sometimes write it into your contract, like you can get your earnest money back after a certain, before a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
So just know that, select the right real estate agent. I think it's totally critical for this.
Yeah. And then some things, after that, the city will take a week, and then they will get, well, it depends, but our city will take a week, and then they will give you a formal response, and they'll give you a whole bunch of lists of stuff. And then, like, I had to call and clarify some. I went in to talk to the fire to kind of...
The fire guy wasn't there.
He wasn't there, so, like, I had to get...
Which ended up in a aisle change, right? Isn't this change from 24 to 26 now or something?
No,
like
it
that?
was 26. Now it can be 24.
Oh, even better.
It can actually
we went the opposite way. Good.
Yep. But it was going to be like 30-something by his comments. It was going to be way too big. So that's why I had to go in and personally meet with him. It was going to destroy everything.
Yeah.
And then I said, hey, some of the things that you are requesting don't apply. So, like, a huge traffic study, like, we got out of that. Some other things.
Oh, we did. Good.
Yep. And then I tried to get out of the they're going to look for what animals are there. And I go, there's no trees. There's no nothing.
It's old farmland.
Yep.
In suburbia.
And I don't know if I said there's no goofers or not.
What'd they say?
No, prairie dogs.
Oh, I still have to check with the environmental people about that.
That's on your list.
My plate.
So, and they said, and this is what's funny, and I didn't say this, but the law in Colorado is if there's prairie dogs, you have to, move them. You have to get rid of them. And there's two ways to get rid of them. One is you can capture them all, have someone capture them all, and go move them someplace. Like, they have places, like some places will take them, or I think like
you can release them on private property with an owner's permission.
Exactly. So just move them, or you can literally gas them. So you plug up all their holes besides one, and you gas them. And what I wanted to say is, if not there are prairie dogs, we're gonna gas them regardless. So why do we?
The excavator's not going to dig around the hole.
And why do we have to pay, to get for you?
For everybody who doesn't know this, in Colorado, they treat gophers like an endangered species.
These prairie dogs are all over the place.
There's open space that just kills Alex inside because he can't buy it to put a house on because it's just for gophers.
Well, it's not that, because it drives up land prices too. Whatever. It's ridiculous. Not that I'm a murderous killer, but there are no prairie dogs.
But he is a bison, and they did beat the gophers.
Exactly. Step on prairie. So that's it. That's kind of the process. If you guys have any questions or want to clarify anything, reach out on Facebook or akg@f9productions.com.
And I have a special request. For any listener who's really enjoying this, we would really appreciate it if you leave us a review on iTunes specifically, and then SoundCloud. You could leave the same review or something like that. So that helps us. Huge. It helps our reach. We're trying to build an audience base here. We have some advertisers that are actually kind of interested since they've heard the podcast. So,
yep. Please do that. Thanks for everything, and we'll be back next week.
See ya.